everybody, and welcome to my channel. And this is a subject that I've always wanted to talk about. Do One Piece characters actually develop? And with that, I just wanted to talk about it because it's been a whole thing in the fandom and the community, whether or not if One Piece characters are stale and boring like they've said, or if One Piece characters are in fact one of the most interesting and dynamic characters in all of fiction. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and start today's topic. With this video right here, I'm going to divide the characters into different sections. Like for instance, I'm going to talk about some of the characters that joined earlier, and I might talk about Luffy last. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this. So how did I get into One Piece? Funny enough, I got into One Piece a little bit later in my life. Not really through the 4Kids anime. When I played on 4Kids, I didn't really get into it there. I kind of got into it when I was in middle school. I just remember one clip, one of my first clips that I've ever seen, which was the death of Luffy's brother, Pork Gas D Ace. Yeah, I know they're not really brothers, but in the anime, they called them brothers. But I just want to jump into this subject real quick. When it comes to One Piece, a lot of people have different opinions about it. And one of those opinions are the development of the characters in the show. Now, I'm gonna save this for later. But when it comes to shonen protagonists, like Luffy, Goku, those are known as static characters, which are characters that influence the world around them. And they don't really go through much character development, but they go through power progression. But let's go ahead and start from the beginning. Let's go ahead and start with chapter 1 of this video, Frankie and Brook. Now, when it comes to Frankie, I like everything he did in the Water 7 arc, maybe the Enies Lobby arc. Besides that, in the time skip, he didn't really do that much. Well, we had that whole machine theme added to him, which I'm not really that much of a fan. It was new design. But besides that, I think Frankie's biggest moment was him helping out Luffy during the whole Enies Lobby. But besides that, Frankie in part 2 is sort of non-existent, being that he hasn't really done that much. And with that being said, with his role as a ship mechanic or shipwright, that's about it. As for Brook, I'm not that much of a fan. And for one reason, with him being, the pervert of the crew and the musician, Brook hasn't really done all that much outside of his debut arc, which was Thriller Bark. And besides that, afterwards, in part 2, that was all he pretty much did. And Frankie's whole character arc really only lasted from Water 7 through Enies Lobby. And Brook's whole character progression really only lasted in Annie's lobby. Outside of that, they really don't have that many memorable moments. As for character development, that's about all I have to say about them. But what do you guys think? You think Frank and Brooke went through some character progression, or do you think that they're the same characters? Which brings us to chapter 2, Chopper and Robin. Now, Chopper was one of my favorite characters in part 1 of the show. And I know his whole thing is being the doctor, but I liked his introduction when it came to fighting. I forgot his name. Uh, Whackpool or Waypool. You know, the guy that eats a lot of things. That's his devil fruit power. But besides that, with Chopper, he sort of became what he didn't want to become, a mascot. And that's been his whole thing in part 2. Besides that, in part 1, I would say from his debut, maybe up to Indy's lobby, those were some of his best moments. And after that, he sort of just disappeared in the background. But now we go to one of my favorite characters. Well, she used to be one of my favorite until we came to part 2 of the time skip, and that being Nico Robin, the archaeologist of the group. Now, Nico Robin was one of my favorite characters for a reason. She had one of the most interesting backstories and even character development in part 1 of the show. You know, the whole thing she had with Crocodile, her flashback, and seeing how her mother died and all that. But besides that, part 2 happened, and she's only important when it comes to finding one of those poneglyphs. And that's about it with her whole importance as a character in part 2 of the show. Whereas in part 1, her biggest moment was in Water 7 in Indy's lobby. She didn't really do much in the Skypiea arc. In the Alabasta arc, she also has some great moments there. But when it comes to character development, Robin's whole character kind of ended in Indy's lobby. And in part 2, outside of those poneglyphs, she didn't really do much. But if you disagree with me on that, just let me know what you think below. That's how Robin became one of my least favorite characters. Now on to chapter 3, we got Sanji and Usopp. I'm going to talk about Usopp first. And personally, I think Usopp was probably the GOAT of part 1. Him with his whole Soge King persona, and he had some of the best moments in part 1. His whole character was becoming less fearful or more brave, but that sort of disappeared. And in part 2, he's become nothing but, running joke. He's the scaredy cat with the big nose. That's about it. But besides that, I would say Usopp's best moments was once again Water 7 and Indy's lobby. Outside of those arcs, maybe Thriller Bark, with that whole thing he had with Corona, that sort of foreshadowed his character arc. Him becoming more brave and less of a coward. But besides that, Oda kind of dropped the ball with that. And now Usopp is sort of a running joke, which makes me sad. But that moves on to Sanji. Now, Sanji is actually still one of my favorite characters. And I know a lot of people have problems with his perverted nature. But outside of that, I do like his skill set. And with Sanji, he sort of had his character development, or the completion of his character arc, came through at the whole cake arc. The whole thing he had with Big Mom and Pudding, that was sort of the end of his character arc. And personally, I think Sanji should have just stayed behind back in Whole Cake. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, Sanji is one of my favorite characters when he's not being perverted. As for his goal, finding the all blue, like we still don't even know what that is. And personally, I'm not really in for it. But that brings us to our next character, which is Zoro. Now, Zoro is a fan favorite when it comes to anime fans. He's pretty much Luffy's second in command. He had probably the greatest moments in the entire anime. But outside of that, Zoro didn't really have any character development outside of him growing stronger and just being there to save the One Piece characters or save Luffy from immediate danger. And his goal with becoming the world's strongest swordsman, he's already accomplished that. I mean, think about it. Mihawk is out, and every other future antagonist who wields a sword will eventually be defeated by him anyway. So Zoro kind of already accomplished his goal. So once again, why is he still there? I mean, I know why. He's there for the Straw Hat members. He saved Luffy's back and everybody else's. But besides that, there really isn't much to say about Zoro. I would like to see an arc about Zoro, maybe a few flashbacks that will further develop his character. But besides that, there really isn't too much to say about Zoro. He's already a fan favorite, and if Oda doesn't do anything with him, that's fine with me. He's already established his legacy as one of the strongest swordsmen of all time, and that's pretty much about it. I still would like to see a flashback, but then we come to Nami. Now, I did enjoy Nami's character with, what was his name? When she was first introduced, and she had that moment with Luffy while fighting Arlong, that sort of established her character from the start. Now, over time, she established her role as a navigator. And afterwards, Nami didn't really get that much character development outside of the Arlong arc. And that sort of pisses me off a little bit, considering that Nami, I think she was the third member that joined. And it's kind of sad that, yeah, she had a little bit to do with Sanji and the whole cake arc. But besides that,